Hi everyone, it's Mark here with a lesson on how to do IELTS Academic Task 1, and in particular, tables. So we'll be taking a look at how this is done. What are some of the key things you need to do to get a high score? And please remember, everything in this video is specifically about tables. However, the principles are there to help you with all different types of IELTS Task 1. So we'll start in a moment. Just a few things to remember. One thing you really need to do in your IELTS Academic Task 1 is find the overall, find the big point. If you're an economist or if you are an investor, if you work for the government, what is the most important thing that you are seeing? What is the big trend you are seeing? Which leads to the second point, which is identify the meta trend. Bit of the same thing. We'll talk about that in a minute. Then identify the macro trends. What are some of the smaller trends that you see within the data? One very important thing that a lot of schools do not teach, support your trends with data. So always remember that, trend data, or of course data trend. I think in this one you'll see a lot of trend data. And one thing I have not talked about a lot in these videos, but I always show, is the big trend. And that's going to be numerically or proportionately. So think about that, all right? Think about that. Which one grows more and which one is just bigger? You'll understand that by the end of the video, so please stick around. All right, let's take a look at the task. This is an official IELTS piece of text. There it is. I want you to pause the video. Please pause the video. More important than anything is that you practice. So please pause the video and I want you to look at the data, make some notes. Okay, welcome back. I'm sure all of you paused the video to look. Let's look at my notes. Okay. Here are the notes that I've made on this. Now let's take a look. All right, so you can see, let's actually hide that for now. You can see here that I've noted generally all modes of transportation have shown an increase. So people are traveling more. All right. That's one of the key points. We're looking at the task here. The table below gives information about changes in modes of travel in England between 1985 and 2000. So overall, things increased in this time period in the past. All right, that's the most important thing. People are traveling more. Secondly, I've noticed these ones are all going down: local bus, bicycle, and walking. So these more traditional forms of travel, so distance is going to be limited here, and these are decreasing, while car, long-distance bus, train, taxi, and other have increased. So we're going with more modern and long-distance suitable travel methods. So that's one thing. We've got two types of travel: traditional short distance and modern long distance. 2 points I note. The most common form of travel in both is car. Here it's this amount here, 3,199, and then it increases. So biggest. Now, one of the most important things is this: taxi. Look at that. In 2000, it's actually the second smallest number, but it shows the most growth. All right? You guys aiming for a 7 or an 8. This is what you need to find. All right, it starts at 13, which is the lowest. It goes to 42, which is the second lowest in this time, but it has grown the most. That is more than, it's more than tripled. So that's big growth. Even though this one's big, it's only grown about 30%. All right, and that's big, but this one has grown more than 200, 300%. So it's really grown a lot. And that is something that you want to look for in most IELTS Task 1s. They're looking for that kind of information. All right, so I've noticed this here. Modern transport is up And you might change that to say modern or long distance transport is up, traditional or short distance is down. So yes, trains, cars, taxis, long distance bus, traditional, walking, bicycle, local bus. And I've noted the big changes. Car is most popular in both times, but taxis show the most growth. Again, if you're aiming for that high score, you are very good at identifying this. This is a great opportunity. All right, so keep that in mind. Now, let's take a look at a sample. All right, so the first thing that I recommend all people do when they're preparing for this test is take those 5 minutes to analyze. A lot of students tell me, oh, if I take 5 minutes, 15 minutes is not enough time. But if you don't know what's happening in the chart, 20, 30, 40 minutes isn't enough time. So I find that if I take the time to carefully look at the data, then when I write it, I'm finished in 7 minutes. I can write these extremely quickly. If you're aiming for a 7 or an 8, that should be what you're doing. You're analyzing the data first and then getting in here. Now for the first paragraph, I do something quite simple. Now here I have added this sentence here. It's about 16 words, and I've almost entirely copied it here. The reason for that is if you only make small changes, the examiner will possibly not count it in your word count. So if it's going to take you 3 minutes to paraphrase this, that's a waste of time. If you copy it, it takes maybe 10 seconds. That's fine. It means they just won't count it in your word count. And I think that's fine, because if you know what's happening here, well, look what I've done here. My entire writing without that is 177. Right? You need to write 150 words. I've got more than that, so I'm fine. Overall, by 2000, people were traveling longer distances. That's what I've noticed from here. And generally, there is a trend towards more modern forms of transport, meaning these modern forms are up. Modern transport showed a clear increase in use. All right, so you've got the meta trend. All right, that's the big picture. All right, like that's one of the main things. That's how you should start the paragraph. Okay, this paragraph is talking about modern transport and increase. All right, first sentence should be clear. Then I start with cars. Why? Because it's the biggest one. All right, as I said, 3,199, and it's gone up. Cars were the main form of transport throughout the time period. All right, this is what I said. Data. Starting at 3,199 in 1985 and then rising to this. All right, good. Now I've got trend. And I just realized I've made a mistake there. So pardon me. We've got trend and data. All right, so you started with this. Cars are the main form, trend. Then data. All right, so just watch out for that. Now, this is for those of you trying to get a high score. This is a notable increase of 1/3. All right, 30%, 33%, whatever it is. So I've not only given the trend and data, but I've highlighted main trend. Okay, really highlight that. Then long distance bus use more than doubled. So again, I'm highlighting it, more than doubled. All right, 54 to 124. That's 100%, more than 100% growth. More than doubled, then comma, rising from 54 to 124. Again, I've done the same thing. I've started with the trend, and then I've supported it with data. All right, trend data over the same period. And that's, again, really nice. Over the same period, I'm demonstrating a very good use of connection. So I've mentioned here, throughout the time period, over the same period. Very nice. The examiner will love that. Well, they will be able to give you the higher score that they want to give you. Trains also increased from 289 miles to 379. All right, so I haven't really talked a lot about here. Again, not the most important. I don't really need to talk a lot. But then this one, really important. Taxis, despite being the least common of the modern transport methods, showed the biggest increase. All right, so I've shown the trend. I've highlighted the trend. It was 13 miles in 1985. By 2000, it had risen to 42 miles, a more than threefold increase. So again, trend data. Always you want to be doing that. I could have said more, like I could have highlighted that taxis were consistently the lowest. But again, for time and for word count, I've just left it out. Traditional forms of transport showed a downward trend. So again, we've got the meta trend. Walking was clearly the most common of these forms. All right, again, I'll say it, trend, and it fell slightly, data. You can see I'm not talking a lot about these pieces of information because look, it's not a big change. Bicycles also fell slightly from 54 to 41, and you'll start to see, like, I say miles here, I don't say it here. Now I just leave it alone because it's clearly established that we're talking about miles. Local buses showed the biggest decrease, so again, trend, they decreased the most, falling from 429 to 274, nearly 1/3. So again, highlight. Like, don't just say it decreased, but highlight it. Did it increase a lot? And I would generally say go with 1/3, 50%, or anything that is 100% or more. So if something doubles or triples, mention that. Then finally, I've just put here, other forms of transport also rose, increasing from 450 to 585. It's really, we don't have much information, so I've chosen to keep that information minimal. That's really it. Another thing I haven't included here is that the numbers here went from 4740 to 6475. Again, that's just a call I made. It's not as important because I have highlighted this here. You could include it, you might not. I suppose you could point it out because it is a notable increase of about 1/3, so it is worth mentioning. So I guess if you want, you could put that here by 20. Yeah. But I've just left it out because I don't really see it as being essential here. Anyway, I hope that helps. Please remember, the most important thing is practice. All right. If you've got the test tomorrow, I do hope this helps. I think the more important thing is going to be practice. All right. So focus on the process. Don't worry about always practicing in 20 minutes. Take the time, take an hour, go over it very carefully, do the analysis, write it, then maybe write it again. Check. All right. The big mistake people do in preparing is they do it, they get some feedback, and then they don't fix it. Don't do a new one, practice the old one again. That is how you become good at writing. 2, analyze the data. All right, be very careful. A lot of schools just focus on slight increase, slight decrease. It's not wrong, but as you can see here, I don't use that information very much. I've mentioned it a few times. You don't need to memorize all of these expressions for increase and decrease. You just need a few. And in fact, I think I've repeated some of them with slight increase and slight decrease. If your writing is good, that doesn't make a big difference. Also, time is the most important aspect when you're improving your writing. Time, practice, and feedback. All right, if you're already a really good writer, then this is going to be a bit easier. But if you've taken the test recently and gotten a 5.5 or 6, time is your friend. Practicing every day or practicing, every other day or 3 times a week, that's more important. All right, practicing for 4 hours in one day doesn't help as much as practicing for 1 hour 2 or 3 times a week. Time is the most important thing. So please do that. I wish you the best of luck. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. And of course, feel free to subscribe. I'll be trying to put up these videos every week. All we're trying to do is help you guys because this test is not as hard as you think. In fact, if you're good at the analysis, then you have an advantage. If you're not good at it, great. Just practice. Anyway, best of luck, and we'll talk soon, hopefully.